This week I've been driving the 2022 Hyundai Tucson Hybrid. This is a top-of-the-line limited trim, and it's just been a very nice car to drive and live with this week. We have a 226 horsepower combined power output from an electric motor and the gasoline engine. It has a 1.6 liter turbocharged engine that's mated to a 6-speed automatic. Hyundai's doing pretty well with their automatic hybrid powertrains these days. They're surprisingly smooth, pretty refined, very quiet. This is rated for about 36 miles to the gallon on the highway and 37 in the city. We've got some pretty cool features with this Tucson, including Hyundai's SMAT Pack, or Park In, Park Out feature. Been using that a lot this week on my driveway. Let's walk you around this car, show you what it's like inside and out. We'll take it for a drive, and we'll wrap up the video with a sound system test. We have a very fresh looking modern interior with this Tucson. In this limited trim, we have a very nice blend of materials. The steering wheel leather is quite nice. We get heated and cooled seats. They're very comfortable. We have a massive panoramic sunroof, and look at these screens. Nothing really juts out or sticks out. Everything is well integrated into the design. They have gotten rid of some physical controls. We no longer have a volume knob. In principle, in theory, I don't like this, but in practice, actually, it's been fine this week. I've gotten used to it. You have 3 auto fan speed controls for your climate control. You can also quickly change things manually there, and no volume knob, unfortunately, but I mostly have been using the steering wheel control, and those are still physical buttons, which I do appreciate. We have a fully digital gauge cluster, a few different drive modes that change the look when you switch them around. It will default to eco every time you start up the car, and that's a perfectly normal drive mode for this car. It feels great. You don't feel like the throttle is being too dulled. It drives great in eco mode. We'll talk more about the drive modes later on in this video. We have wireless charging down here, a nice little space to put your phone. There's room for your phone, a passenger's device. There's pretty big cup holders. We've got a nice center console, no charge ports or anything in there, but it is lined with some felt on the bottom so nothing rattles around too much in there. Heated steering wheel, downhill descent control, and lots of cameras, parking sensors, various things. And of course we've got this push button shifter, which has taken a little bit of getting used to this week, but it's okay. After living with it, I think these buttons are pretty well differentiated. We have a 4-wheel drive lock, which basically just locks the torque split 50-50 front and rear, your parking brake, and this really nice wide screen. Very responsive. It has wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. What else do you need? This is pretty much Hyundai's standard infotainment these days. It works well. You get sounds of nature. There we go, Snowy Village, something to look forward to in a few more months. I've always really applauded Hyundai for doing a really good job with their physical controls and buttons. And this move to, this isn't even haptic, it doesn't really respond, it just makes a beep. This move to just these touch buttons is a bit of a disappointment for me. But I don't know, in practice, it works just about as well as the physical controls. Everything's really well organized. This area does get a little bit dusty. However, the dust that's on here right now is after a whole week. A quick wipe down with a microfiber cloth that you keep in your glove box and you're back in business. The gloss black here actually looks pretty good, and this press car, 700 miles, not a single scratch on it. I don't think any of this is gonna look too bad after a few years if you take good care of it. Otherwise, we've got a pretty standard Hyundai interior. All of your controls are very easy to find. You've got a couple seat memory settings right here. Look how well that is just kind of hidden into this line. And I think just a very cool looking interior. I really like the visibility in this Tucson. The fact that there are no screens jutting up and out of the center stack or the gauge cluster, I think is pretty nice. It also has your turn signal cameras, which show your blind spots. Let's hop in the back seat, show you guys what that's like. Pretty spacious back seat, a lot of leg room. We've got adjustable backrest and heated rear seats. Tons of legroom. I'm 5'10". This is my driving position. I can almost stretch out here. Very impressive. couple USB ports down there, and of course this panoramic sunroof. We've got an armrest. Seating position is comfortable. This is a very nice back seat area. Very spacious, roomy, no complaints. How about the trunk? Same story back here, quite a bit of room. This car feels and looks a little bit smaller than the interior space would suggest. It's pretty roomy back here. There's a lot of room to put stuff, things, people. If you don't need a 3-row SUV, I think this is just about all the crossover you really need. Some interesting design elements on this Tucson. We've got this rear C-pillar strike right here, which is very interesting. These are bigger 19-inch wheels, though they still have a pretty good sized sidewall, which is nice. Rear end is a little bit funky. I'm not sure how I feel about these taillights, and everyone seems to dislike the Hyundai logo right here. Worst case scenario, just throw some window tint over it, black it out, and it's gone. You've kind of debadged your Hyundai Tucson. These creases in the side of the car are probably the most interesting design elements for me. I kind of like it. It almost looks like box flares or fenders. It's going to be interesting for the N-line Tucson when that comes out. I think it looks pretty sharp. It's different. Hyundai's doing some fun, cool new designs. They're innovating a little bit instead of following what everyone else is doing, and I give them credit for that. Let's pop the hood, show you guys what it looks like underneath. Oh, that's heavy. Pretty standard looking hybrid powertrain. Lots of orange metal wires and connections, and of course here's the SmartStream 1.6 liter GDI turbo. There you go. It rarely ever turns on unless if you get into the throttle at low speeds, and then when it does come on, it's pretty quiet. Let's take this thing for a drive, see what it's like on the road, and talk about what it's been like to live with this week. So when you put the Tucson in reverse, chances are the engine's going to be off. So it's going to give a little audible beeping sound from a speaker underneath the car. It's pretty loud, so chances are people are going to hear you. It's a little bit louder than I would like. I think if you were backing out of your driveway early in the morning, it might wake up some neighbors. We have some very lightweight controls in this Tucson. Steering is feather light. Throttle pedals very light. This has H-track all-wheel drive. It doesn't quite feel like 226 horsepower, but it's a good, healthy amount of power and torque. There's a little bit of electric torque fill going on here, and it really makes the Tucson quick off the line. It almost accelerates up to speed like an electric car. You feel slight shifts from the 6-speed automatic, but they're pretty well hidden in the background, and they're almost barely noticeable, which is nice. In the gauge cluster, you've got this battery meter right here, and your charge eco power meter, depending on how much throttle you're giving the car. This is kind of an interesting alternative to a rev counter. I think it works. All week I've had a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, how to stay in EV. And this Tucson does feel like a more modern hybrid. You can maintain a pretty good speed in full EV mode in this car. If you're just on flat level surface and you've got a good amount of charge in your battery, you can cruise at 65, 70, 80 miles per hour in EV mode. There is also a plug-in hybrid Tucson coming, which I think will probably be the one to get after credits and incentives and all that stuff. But for now, this is a really nice car to drive. It's been, I always say, if I'm finding myself getting in a press car, taking it for all my errands, all my little trips around town, then chances are it's been a pretty nice car to live with and daily drive all week. And that's exactly what's happened with this. I've been getting a solid 34, 35 miles to the gallon in combined driving with a lot of short trips, and with engine cold starts, that's pretty impressive. It's nice to be able to have a crossover with this size, with this amount of usable interior space, but not really have any concessions with fuel economy. We have Hyundai's fantastic highway driving assist. one of the best systems on the market. It's a little bit sluggish to accelerate around slower cars in this hybrid, but that is when you put it in eco mode, the default mode. If you're in smart or sport, it's going to accelerate a little bit quicker around other cars. Pretty much, I've been doing most of my driving this week in eco mode. It's a really nicely tuned mode. Like I said earlier, it doesn't feel like the throttle response is too dulled. Haven't really played around with smart and sport mode too much. All sport mode does is increases your throttle saturation, maybe turns the engine on a little bit more than it would normally, and you get a rev counter. You do have paddle shifters in this Tucson, which is kind of cool, so you can see at least what your revs are doing, give you a slightly sportier driving experience. But again, they don't really seem to be doing much right now. So this is a hybrid at the end of the day, and if you want the sporty Tucson, I would hold out for the N line. So we're going to accelerate here. Looks like we're not going to be able to maintain EV getting up to speed. But once you get going, hear how quiet this 1.6 liter engine is. Once you get going, if you let off the throttle, you can just coast in EV mode and maintain a good 40, 50 miles per hour. Pretty cool. You can kind of hypermile this a little bit, and it gamifies the driving experience, which I think adds some engagement to things. The brake pedal feels very natural, very progressive. The transition between electric power and the gas engine turning on is as seamless as it gets. There's maybe a little bit of a delay sometimes. Turning radius isn't very impressive. Really, the only time where this powertrain struggles is off the line. It can be a little bit sluggish and take a moment for everything to kind of wake up and spring into action. But for normal driving, day-to-day use, this powertrain has been awesome. Let's put it into sport mode here just for fun. See what happens. Not a lot of grip from these tires. Ample power, a good amount of torque, a nice amount of horsepower at the higher end. This 1.6 liter turbo is a little bit peaky, but that's nothing new with these engines. Handling feels about average for a modern crossover. I do like that this has a 6-speed automatic instead of a CVT. It is kind of nice to see Hyundai doing a good job with their automatics and their hybrid powertrains. Again, at speed on the highway, you can just eat up miles in this thing. It'll get excellent fuel economy. Highway driving assist keeps you perfectly centered in the lane. It lasts virtually forever, 30, 45 seconds, depending on what driving conditions you're in. While we're just cruising here, let's go in and listen to this Bose sound system. Wasn't expecting that. Finally, it prompts me to put my hands on the wheel. a nice sound system. Maybe not as impressive as some of Hyundai's Harman Kardon units, but pretty darn close. I think you'd be happy with this as a premium audio option. A lot of complaining from these tires, but overall, nice levels of mechanical grip. Also, this is kind of a funky looking steering wheel, but it's pretty comfortable to use, very comfortable to hold. I like these bottom spokes, and they're kind of angled so that you can just perfectly rest your hand right here. Alright, so how can we sum up the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid? This has been a great car to drive this week. Really well calibrated hybrid powertrain. I like the subtle torque fill from the battery, the electric motor. It's very comfortable, great ergonomics. Not in love with this new touch control layout here, but in practice it actually has been just fine. That's just me complaining because it's different and it's new, but really it's okay. This is a great car. Really, I mean, I don't have a lot of complaints about this thing. There's a little bit more wind noise on the highway than maybe some of Hyundai's sedans, but it drives pretty well. It's not particularly sporty or fun to drive, but the gamification of hybrid driving can kind of fill in that gap. It's fun to try to keep this in EV mode for as long as possible and kind of turn the engine off by letting off the throttle, then coasting at your speed in EV mode. So that's kind of enjoyable, and you get some pretty impressive fuel economy numbers. Don't have any real world testing yet this week, and I'm not sure if Daily Motor is going to get a chance to do a highway driving fuel economy run on this. But yeah, I think this will be a nice, efficient daily driver. If you can get your hands on one of these now, it's not a bad buy, and if you can get your hands on the plug-in hybrid in the future, that'll probably be the way to go, if I'm being honest, personally. But if you don't have to worry about plugging in, this is just a great car to get in, turn on, and go. It's been awesome to live with this week. You don't even have to put it in park when you come to a stop. You just hit the off button and you're in park already. It does it automatically. It's got some pretty neat features like the smart park in, park out. That's pretty neat. Remote start, all that good stuff. There you go, guys. New Hyundai Tucson. I think that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.